I'm incredibly disappointed with Charles Oakley. I really, really am. I know that he was done wrong by James Dolan. We've all recognized that he was done wrong by James Dolan. But to remind our audience nationwide and the folks here, Charles Oakley met with the commissioner and James Dolan face-to-face with Michael Jordan on the phone. Michael Jordan is the owner of the Charlotte Hornets. He doesn't have time for this, but he made time because this is one of his best friends in the world. He got on the phone, representing Oakley essentially. No lawyers were involved. They had a discussion. James Dolan looked this man in the face and apologized. The commissioner, basically, along with Michael Jordan, tried to quell this situation. The banishment of Charles Oakley from Madison Square Garden was immediately lifted. And regardless of what you feel about what James Dolan did or what James Dolan said, there are 3 security personnel for Madison Square Garden who have legitimacy for a criminal case against Charles Oakley because video shows him putting his hands on them when they were instructed to ask him to leave the garden, which is perfectly within their right to do because they were instructed by the owner, their boss, to do so. And so when you consider all of that, and that the commissioner and Michael Jordan convinced James Dolan to drop all of that, to shove all of that aside, not only that, apologized to the man to his face and simply said, look, as an owner of the New York Knicks, you want to be a part of the family. He said, I can respect that. I'm willing to allow that to happen, but I can't let you do that and then turn around and read in the papers that you're insulting me. He said, why would I invite you to do that? So there was no resolution that was reached. Charles Oakley was accurate about that. He did need time to contemplate things. He's accurate about that. But to depart from that meeting, with the commissioner having gotten involved, with Michael Jordan having gotten involved, to Dolan to make basically 99% of the concessions, the only thing he didn't do was apologize publicly to Oakley. And then for Oakley to depart from that a couple of days later, after all of that took place, and literally to call the man the modern-day Donald Sterling, now you're inviting trouble. Not to mention the fact that you're doing it on the eve of All-Star Weekend. You are Charles Oakley because of who you were as a New York Knick and what you meant to the New York Knicks, who are a part of the NBA. There's a bigger picture here and a bigger play. And the last thing I want to say about the matter is this, Max. I don't blame Charles Oakley for being upset. Charles Oakley does deserve an apology publicly from Dolan because Dolan said what he said about Charles Oakley publicly. But just because you don't get everything you want doesn't mean you go off the rails and go to this point. Because when you do that, or think about what Charles Oakley is quoted as saying, y'all. Dolan alluded to him possibly being an alcoholic. I have said he's not an alcoholic. I've known him for 20 years. Michael Jordan has said he's not an alcoholic. Friends throughout the league have said he's not an alcoholic. James Dolan saying that about him, as insulting as that may be, it ain't the end of the damn world. He said something about you. It was incendiary. It was wrong or whatever. But for Charles Oakley to be quoted as saying, I would rather go to jail than take this mess from this man. Excuse me, let me get this straight because you don't like.
He said, I'd rather go to jail than saying the Knicks did something for me.
That's right. So rather than saying the Knicks did something for you. But that may end up being the case because guess what, Max? Dolan is perfectly, I mean, think about this. Dolan could sit there and instead of telling the security at Madison Square Garden to drop the matter altogether, he can let those individual personnels of him pursue legal action against Charles Oakley. And all of that because the man won't publicly apologize? Really? You got to put on your big boy pants and shove all of that aside and move on. You really, really do.